This episode is brought to you by Ellie.ai. So, are you modeling data on legacy tools designed for how IT teams worked probably 30 or 40 years ago? These legacy tools can't keep up as data teams shift to domain driven architecture and modern data products, a gap that's evident in a data driven enterprise. So, Ellie.ai is the modern data modeling solution built for collaboration and speed. You benefit from AI assisted workloads and 150 plus database connectors to support end to end data modeling. Customers have reported up to 60% efficiency gains when building a data product with Ellie. So learn more at Ellie.ai and get your free trial of Ellie today. How you doing?
G'day, Joe. Great
G'day.
to meet, at least this way, and hopefully in the future, maybe over a cuppa, face to face.
Love to. That's awesome. Well, first of all, congrats on your new book. It's
Thank
awesome to
you.
see.
Yes, yeah, it's I- as we go, I'll share a little bit, if you like, of the catalyst. But there's a few groups that have shown interest in it, and yeah, the data warehousing community. But yeah, I'm assuming that today we're looking particularly at how data engineers might get excited about the content.
That seems to be the case. I know a lot of data engineers who are. Before we get started, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. I'm an Aussie. You probably worked that out from the accent. Been in IT a frightening amount of time. Started in the late 1960s. Started as
Jeez.
a coder, doing serious development work. He moved into solution architecture, project management. Hate project management. Got into data modeling. And long story short, I've seen a shift from data modeling for specific applications. Still applies, for example, for an agile project, but there's an increasing appetite for data modeling that reflects the whole of enterprise view, and data warehousing, which you and your colleagues are involved in, is just one aspect of this shift to the larger perspective, Joe.
Hmm. And maybe describe this shift for the audience. You have a lot of context in data modeling. I'm sure we could cover this topic for a bit, but what have you seen?
Okay, well, look, I'll just mention just some perspectives, and I sometimes joke, Joe, about think big, think small.
Mm,
Initially, the first program I worked on was part of an IT system that had no need for data sharing. Why? Because it was the first application on the computer. It was the only one. No data sharing. Second one had zero overlap. You wind the clock forward, and people are saying we've got more and more applications, but we need to share data. 1980s, lots of well-intended but disastrous attempts to just have one database, the corporate database. So went from think small to think big. Then at the methodology level, 1980s case tools. Let's design everything up front, what the agile people call big design up front. And then the 2000s, I think it was, when agile started to gain visibility. So think small. Data warehousing. Bill Inmon, enterprise. Ralph Kimball, small. So again, I'm seeing, Joe, these think big, think small. Now, an area I don't have personal hands-on involvement with, but just watching. Data fabric, start of the 2000s, and then more recently, the last few years, data mesh. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding of data fabric was, centralize, data mesh, decentralize. So think big, think small. And what I'm thinking, Joe, and I'll take the town plan analogy, people within IT seem to be struggling with embracing the benefits of thinking big, sharing of data and standards and governance and all the rest, but it comes at a massive price and takes forever. Whereas you think small and you deliver tangible value to the business in a timely fashion, and they love
Hmm.
you, and then you do it again and again and again, and then you say, oh dear, I've got silos, we should have thought big. So town planning, the analogy I use is, if you're building a new city, you want the big picture, but you want engineering details, beam computations, slab computations. You need to get down to both. And long story short is, in the 1970s, an architect said, let's have patterns for everything from as small as door handles through to kitchens and bathrooms, through to houses, right up to entire cities. And his point of view was, if you have non-technical people, but they understand what a university is, what a hospital is, and they can shuffle, and the community can engage with the professionals planning the town. And I sometimes joke, Joe, that if somebody suggests putting the sewage treatment plant in the middle of the housing estate, somebody might say, not a good idea. um, but similarly, I'm suggesting that when we're trying to get data and manage it from the whole of enterprise planning level, if we have patterns that the business can shuffle around and play with, just like universities and hospitals for town planning, if the data-minded people from the business can play with these patterns, and then the engineers, and I'm using the word engineers deliberately, Joe, can actually implement these things, the patterns can build a bridge between business vision and solution delivery.
And for the audience out there, you mentioned this word pattern. And in your writings, you've been very deliberate. When I say your writings, you've written books, articles on
Yep.
this, but this word patterns, I feel like it was something that um, current practitioners are almost rediscovering. But explain these patterns to the audience who may not know what they are.
Right. Okay. I won't try to do Christopher Alexander's patterns for universities and hospitals. I'll leave
Okay.
it to other people for that. For the data modeling patterns, Joe, an example that is loved and hated is the party role pattern.
Oh yeah.
And there's a whole heap of tension about that, and I get it, I understand it, and we could talk lots about that. But when I'm engaging with the business, I say, look, yeah, you'll hear people talk about this pattern. Put that talk aside, please. Think about the address book in your smartphone. It's got people, it's got organisations, it's got contact points. What it doesn't have, at least in my phone, is the interrelationships. I can't record, for example, two organisations and record that one is a subsidiary of another. I can't formally. I might do it in notes, but come on, data people hate trying to interpret loose, sloppy notes. So think of an address book, but with the ability to capture interrelationships in a formal manner. And people say, I get that. Then I say there's a pattern for geospatial location. And look, if you want to get into it, there's the OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium, I think it is, and they have technical specifications for how you do geospatial stuff. I say to the business, you don't want to think about that. Think of Google Maps and the layers in maps, and as a business person, tell me what geospatial location information you might be interested that would help the business. And so tick, now they know, understand party role, they understand geospatial location. I'm just going to mention one more task. Many of the business people will understand workflow management. You do this task, and when it's finished, you start that task. If they're familiar with Microsoft projects, and say, well, just let's pretend it's Microsoft project on steroids. So, Joe, these patterns have technical precision and are implementable. But when you engage with the business, you just say, think of your address book. Think of Google Maps, think of Microsoft Project, and they get it, and they can engage in the project, and your engineers, including your data engineers, can be comfortable that the overall plan, the vision that the business articulates, can actually be implemented.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And how does one go about learning about these patterns?
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky. Um, Firstly, credit to the authors. David Hay, I think it was 1995, came out with his
Yep.
first book on data model patterns. Len Silverstone, in the early 2000s, a 3-volume series. And here's where,
Big books.
oh yes, I love them. um, and if you want to get into serious data modeling using patterns, I use them as reference books.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, you'll probably shake your head and say, John, you're a crazy person. I've actually read every word on both of those gentlemen's books, plus others. But just taking those books alone, collectively, there's about 2,000 pages of detail, and you think, oh dear. So now, as I say, here's the cheeky bit on my website, which I'm happy to share, or in the appendix of the new book, is what I call lightweight patterns. They're
Yeah.
several pages, and for town planning purposes, Joe, that's often sufficient. People can skim
Sure.
through and say, oh, okay, I understand the geospatial location pattern. I understand it enough for the conversation. I understand task and workflow management, dependencies, durations, etc. So a lot of people I'm hearing, Joe, find that my lightweight patterns, which free on my website or in the appendix of my book, that's probably sufficient. And if they want further detail, I completely endorse people grabbing David Hay, Len Silverstone's books. They're great.
Yeah. Yeah. They're great. They're massive undertakings. So start with John's book. Yes, we're gonna get to your book in a bit, but you mentioned this other term, town plan.
Yep.
What is that?
Okay. A story I sometimes tell. Um, And again, you realise I've got a cheeky sense of humour.
Yeah, of course.
Australia used to be multiple states, just like the United States of America. In 1901, we decided to become one nation. And here's where I'm a little bit cheeky. We could have called ourselves the USA, the United States of Australia. But somebody, Joe, had beaten us to the acronym. Blast.
These bastards.
um, um, so, yeah, and we had two major cities, Melbourne and Sydney, and they both wanted bragging rights. They wanted the national capital in their city. The peaceful and sensible compromise was, let's buy some farmland, I'll say loosely halfway between the two, and build a new national capital. And again, here's where I throw a light-hearted spin on it, Joe. Can you imagine getting the best tools and the best tradesmen and putting them in the paddock and saying, guys, we want a city, just start building without a sketch, a town plan of where we want to go. So for the data community, it's the same thing. I've seen people say, and I'm sure you've heard it, why isn't everybody coding? um,
Right.
but if you've got a sketch, and I talk about the mile wide, inch deep, um, narrow perspective, which provides an outline, and then you drill down on project by project on what you need. But the town plan, excuse me, Joe, I'm going to use a phrase that some people are going to recoil at. It's a little bit like a conceptual data model. And again,
Okay.
conceptual data models, some people say, oh, they're horrible. They take too long to build, they're irrelevant, they are in absolute detail, and I say no. Back to our town plan analogy, Joe, the town plan can be viewed on one page with supplementary documentation in sufficient detail. So that's town planning, but data town planning, just shifting the patterns around
Hmm.
and articulating the types and subtypes. So you say, for example, which I touched on, geospatial locations, you can get layers for your organisation. What sorts of layers might be helpful to see?
Is that a question to me?
Oh, no, no,
Or
sorry.
oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
that's a question you present to the business in a
Right.
workshop.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologise, Joe.
No, no worries. I was like,
Um, yeah. So look, I'll give a real example. I did some work for a cemetery, and geospatial locations is important to them. Um, they've got to know where the available plots and plaque positions, etc., are. So they wanted three-dimensional mapping, and they wanted to have pathways so that you know the best way to get from the car park to where your dearly departed's memorialisation is placed, etc. So they were able to say, yeah, pathways, vacant plots, cafes, etc. So they were able to articulate. In other organisations, they will tell me what types of locations are important to them. So, Joe, you use these patterns as conversation starters. Tell me about your assets, your resources. What types of assets and resources do you have? What types of contracts and arrangements do you enter into? What sorts of documents do you have that you need to manage? So each of these patterns has a name, has a broad concept, and then you ask the business to articulate for you what are the subtypes of interest to them.
which makes sense. The way I see a lot of data town planning occurring today is more of a, I guess, a lack of town planning. It's what you describe as the um, go build a town,
Yes.
or go build a cemetery with no planning whatsoever. Just start digging, and then as we get more, more guests at our cemetery, we'll, dig another, and so on, right? But that seems to be how we, um, at least in the, I would say in modern data engineering and analytics engineering, that tends to be, I think, how it's approached. It's um, not a lot of forethought to this these towns or cemeteries or data
Yeah.
warehouses or lake houses we're building these days. It just seems very haphazard. If it were a town, I would say, well, I guess dig a sewer and dig something else. We'll put a
Yep.
house on top of it while we're at it. Um,
So I use a phrase of different styles of town planning, and I'm just trying to. I can't see my notes, so I'll just
no, it's
talk from memory. But basically, in town planning and in data, there's the anarchy style. Everybody does what they want when they want. And my guess, I don't know the United States history, but my guess in the so-called Wild West, in the early days, 200 years ago, people would just say, let's start building. That's the anarchy style. The reaction to that is the centralised dictatorial style. Don't you dare start building until we've got everything in place. And some people hate conceptual data modeling at the enterprise level because we just want to get going and deliver value. Please don't tell us we can't start yet because you haven't finished your enterprise conceptual model. And
sure.
then there's that compromise of town planning, mile wide, inch deep, a sketch, and then people can start building. The
Well,
story.
actually, it's interesting in the States. I'll give you a bit, and this might resonate with you. The East Coast is actually where I've seen the worst town plans because these
Ah,
are historically, townships that may have started in the 1600s, 1700s,
yes,
um, and so you're typically building roads around where horse or animal paths used to be.
yes,
And so, if you go to Boston, for example, it's an absolute disaster in terms of how it's like the lack of planning because it was one of the original cities in the U.S. and the streets make no sense whatsoever. And so, but they built around it, and they kept expanding out. And if you go to the West, actually, in Salt Lake City, I think Salt Lake City is the one city I've seen where you would have to, unless you didn't know how to count, you could not get lost in Salt Lake City because the city is a grid. Everything is basically, it starts at the temple and it goes uh, north, south, east, west coordinates from an origin, just like you would in a regular X, Y
yes.
axis. So it's interesting because it's so in, just yeah, it is the Wild West for sure. I mean, I grew up in the West, but it seems like the towns, like Salt Lake City, is like probably the best planned city I've seen in anywhere for that
Excellent.
reason. But to your point, it came from, I think, seeing anarchy as you describe it in other towns, and you're like, we could do that. We could also do something smarter. So,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll tell a story of something I saw on television just a few days ago, and I thought, look, I'll share this with Joe um, because this might resonate with the people who do data engineering. Okay, so the story is true story. Um, a guy has a block of land in the country. He wants to retire there. That's not the town he lives in, but that's the town he wants to live in once he gets a house on his vacant block of land. So in Australia, I assume in the US, sometimes you have beautiful homes that the developer wants to knock down to build big apartments, and you can buy a beautiful old weatherboard home, guys with chainsaws cut it into halves or thirds, truck it, reassemble it. Good for the environment, it's reuse. Good for the developer, he doesn't have to pay tip fees. And good for somebody who gets a much cheaper house. The problem was, okay, the story of good tools and good tradespeople, but they made a little mistake. They erected this house in the country town on the wrong block of land.
oh,
So he goes to see his new house, stands on his block and looks at his neighbour's block and thinks, that's my house. Now,
oh no,
yeah, so Joe, it could have ended in disaster. It could have been all sorts of fights with solicitors and courts and suing and countersuing. Um, these two blokes had heart and brain, and his neighbour said, well, I don't really like your house. What say we just swap titles? You can own
right.
my block, I'll own yours, and down the track I'll build the house I want. Everybody's happy. Okay, so a good outcome for what could have been a disaster. Joe, why am I telling this story? You've got data engineers, and just like you can lift and shift and transform and deliver a house to a block of land, you can pick up, lift, shift, transport, transform, and drop data in a place, in a repository. In a data vault world, it might be against a hub. In the anchor world, it's an anchor. In Kimball, you could be loading dimensions, whatever. It doesn't matter, but you get the
Yep.
idea that you're picking data up and moving it. What if you're moving data into the customer thing, but the data you're moving in actually isn't customer stuff? And what
Right.
if they're expecting stuff in customer that you didn't deliver? You've delivered it to the wrong block. um, and we can laugh at that, Joe, and say, would that really happen? Yes.
Right.
um,
Who would be
and
so stupid?
and please, it's not the engineer's fault. Um, um, if they're told to pick up half a house and deliver it to this title in the country, or data
Yeah.
engineers are told to pick up data. I'm going to give some examples. I've already mentioned I did some work for a cemetery, and they were setting up a data vault, a data warehouse of that shape. So some of the people in the team said, okay, you want a customer hub. What's a customer? And the cemetery business representative scratched their head and said, it's actually not an easy answer. So they said, you've got somebody who's bought a prepaid plot, they're the customer. Then a number of years later, unfortunately, they have Alzheimer's and they're not able to make decisions for themselves. They've appointed a power of attorney who acts on their behalf. Now, who is the customer? The power of attorney individual, or the person who originally bought the block? And then, what's the saying? Two things that are inevitable: death and taxes. This person eventually passes away, and you've got an executor for the estate who manages affairs, and they are interacting with the cemetery. Joe, who is the customer? And if we are going to be loading data into the customer hub for the cemetery, the data engineers are competent, clever, technically skilled people, but they need to engage with the business. And I'm going to make a point here. Look, I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but the little bit I do understand of human nature is, Joe, we come in different packages, different shapes and sizes, and you get some technically competent people who will happily run a workshop, a facilitated workshop with management. Other technical people don't want to do that. And please, Joe, I'm not being critical of people who say, I'm happier coding, please don't take me to the boardroom. I don't want to be there.
Right.
So this latest book, Joe, is in recognition that we come in different shapes and sizes, but also for those technical data engineers who want to perhaps expand their career and engage directly with management. It's got some how-to guides, but alternatively, they can pick up a book, hand it to a business analyst and say, can you do this for me? I'm not interested. And I repeat, Joe, I'm not being critical at all of people who come with different interests, different aptitudes. That's fine, but I think the book can help the data engineers either to do it or to engage with the people who will do it on their behalf.
So when you talk of, and the book is called "The Elephant in the Boardroom," right? Or it's
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, the data
So
elephant in the boardroom. Yep, yep.
the elephant in the boardroom. Yeah. So walk us through that. So say I'm a data engineer. I'm interested in working with the business
Yep,
in a data modeling capacity, right?
yes.
How do I do this? What are some of the first steps I should do?
Right. Probably grab a book that will introduce you, if you're not already familiar with it, to data modeling. But a lot of data engineers are familiar with relational databases, and that's a really good start to technical, hands-on data modeling. So that's good. Steve Hoban's got some books that will help on the data modeling front, but you can probably do stuff on YouTube or whatever. But and I'm going to make a little point here. Some
Let me
universities,
back up here. Let me back up. So when you say data modeling,
yep,
for the what does data modeling mean? Because I think the at least the modern crop of data engineers I know, a lot of them think it means making a star schema. It means putting
ah,
data into a table.
ooh, Okay,
Is that
so
data modeling? Let's take a step back, and I think we probably should have done this before, but I think let's clear the air. Like, what if it, at the root, what is data modeling?
so data modeling has got two aspects. One is solution delivery, and you know Juha Corpella, I think quite well, and he says instead of talking about conceptual, logical, and physical data modeling, Juha talks of business modeling and solution modeling. Okay, I like that because people get tripped up. Is that logical? Is that physical or whatever? So at the solution end, data modeling involves, for example, designing physical tables. And now I'm going to make a big leap and respond to a topic that I think you're touching on. A lot of people in the data warehousing analytics BI space, and I've seen this, I even saw it just a few days ago on LinkedIn. They talk of the four most common forms of data modeling, which is, if you like, your Kimball, star schema, dimensional modeling, InMon, and they often call it 3NF, which is third normal form. And as a purist data modeler, I recoil at that and think you're really talking about normalized rather than third normal form. That's another topic. But yeah, so InMon, Kimball style, data vault, and one big table. But Joe, they are all data models related to solution delivery for the data, I'll call it loosely the data warehousing space. But if you're in an agile team and you've got to create a new database, you want a normalized database in SQL Server or whatever. That's data modeling for solution delivery of a standalone solo application. Just recently interacting with some delightful people who proudly wear the badge of ontologist, and oh dear, that's another topic. In their world, a lot of what they're doing is what they call interoperability. So if you've got
Hmm.
an organisation that has to exchange data with other organisations, you need a data structure to package up what you're sharing. That is data modelling. That's not for an operational system, that's for exchange. That's not for business intelligence. So, Joe, there are all sorts of data modelling at the solution level, then at the business level. That's where I'm suggesting the data town plan is a model, but it's business concepts. It's high level, it's generic, and we've touched on Data Vault. Dan Linstead, the creator of Data Vault,
Hmm.
warns about physically implementing hubs at a level that is too generalized. But for a data town plan, here we can talk about assets and customers and agreements and geospatial locations. So the data modeling I'm suggesting in the data town plan is high level business concepts, and if you use patterns, it's got a clear path to delivery, and you can take those business concepts models and turn them into solution models. Does that help, Joe?
This
I've
makes
given
sense. Yeah.
given a
And hopefully for
long
the
answer.
audience, this clears the air, right? So I think for the audience, recognize what John did not say. He didn't say cram a bunch of data into a database and um, call it a day. So
Yeah. So
so
there
then
still
back.
is that. Sorry, go on. Please go on, Joe. Yep.
No, what are you saying? What are you saying?
I was going to say a lot of people do, perhaps because of their experience, they see data modeling um, for relational databases and at the implementation level, very physical. And I've heard plenty of people say I don't want a data model. Just let me get into the tool, create table, cast, create index, etc. I don't need a data model. I'm just going to create the physical artifacts directly. A person I knew from many years ago said he laughed and he said they don't want a data model, but if I'm building a house, I'll have a house plan. If I'm building a dog kennel, I won't go to the Shire Council and submit a kennel plan. I'm just going to start building. But his point was, even if you're building a dog kennel, you do have a plan. It's in your head. Nobody
Yep.
can see it, but you do have a plan. So he said, yeah, even somebody who says create table cast, they've got a data model. It's just in their head.
Hmm. Absolutely. And this is something I write about too. Is there's implicit versus intentional, I guess unintentional and intentional modeling, and
Yes,
as you say, it's you're doing it whether you recognize it or not. There's just varying degrees of your outcome of how good it's
yes,
going to be. So
yep, yep. So
yeah.
yeah, I just saw an email I think from Steve Hoban, so I'm not sure if
Oh
he's going to
yeah,
be joined.
he won't be joining us. If the audience Steve was going to join us, I think he's a bit busy with some other stuff, so we'll have to have him on next time. But
Yeah.
back to the book then. So the book, you this is your third book. Is it third
Yes,
book or fourth? Third.
third.
Okay,
Yes.
so um, yeah, nimble elephant, elephant in the fridge, and then data elephant in the wood. What's with the theme with elephants?
Oh, okay. So again, this will make you smile. Um, a friend of mine was planning to write a book on cooking using Japanese recipes. And he proposed the title was to be Japanese Cooking for the Western Palate. And the publisher said, another John, not me, the publisher said, John, that's an accurate description of the title, but it will never sell. It's not going to be eye-catching. And he suggested, what about a title such as It's Not Just About Fish? And people will say, what's not just about fish? So I did have a more formal title for my first book, The Nimble Elephant, which became the subtitle. And I thought, there's a tension in the agile development world between head offices who's seen as big, cumbersome, hard to move, versus agile. So agile, nimble, elephant, yeah, big, heavy, hard to move. So it was a light-hearted title to join the agile practitioners with the head office data governance people. So
This
it
reminds
was
me
just
of
a
there was an intro to this book, Balancing Agility and Discipline, I think, that
yes,
had a story of an elephant and a monkey, and then the elephant was a slow lumbering thing. The monkey moved fast, but eventually they both got caught, basically being their own bottlenecks, and they figured out how to hopefully work together. And I think that
yes. I love that book. I
it's a
mentioned
good
it, I
book.
believe, in The Nimble Elephant.
Yeah,
And
that's where I heard about it from. Yeah,
okay, to cut a long story short, they're saying that if you just start doing an agile project without some architectural considerations,
yeah,
in some cases you'll get away with it because you say, oh, that architecture wasn't quite right, but hey, we're nimble, we're fast, we're agile. Yeah, we'll swing to a different platform, different architecture. The authors warn that sometimes they're real gotchas. Because you got your architecture wrong, all those half a dozen sprints you've already done, you have to throw away and start again. And he said, art, science, uh, the art is working out ahead of time what architectural decisions are going to be gotchas if you get them wrong. I, I
yeah.
haven't I haven't done the book justice, Joe, but yeah,
No, it's a good one. I'm glad you turned me onto it. I read it a few years ago. I thought it was really good, and it struck me that this book came out I think 2003 2004 if I'm not mistaken, and you could read it today, which I well read it a few years ago, but it felt like the same things that were being talked about there, and then the same things you're talking about in Nimble Elephant, which I think came out a while ago. These
Yep.
are this we're still tackling a lot of the same issues, like balancing agility and discipline and rigor, and and especially in the states, right? I think we're more uh, it's more of a tendency in the states just to move fast and break things, right?
Right.
Like I was reading today about Doja's, how they're going to rewrite all of Social Security's database from COBOL to Java in like a few months, because why not? Um, so it's just like you're going to be using an LLM for sure on this thing. I don't know how you're ever going to go through millions of lines of code by eyesight, but it was one of these things where I'm like, I guess this is just how we do things here. We'll just say screw it, we'll move fast. Other countries, I think, move a bit more deliberately. This is a very big generalization, but I think the American ethos, I know, for especially with data modeling, is like screw it, let's just be agile. We're moving fast. It's all that matters. So,
And,
and
and
we get to
Joe,
deal with the consequences, though. Things break a lot.
yeah,
So,
and Joe, I refer to the T model, and I'm not referring to the T model Ford, an American vehicle. Um, Letter T has a top, mile wide, inch deep. Then it has the stem, which is drill down. So Joe, I hear what you're saying about, yeah, build fast, see what breaks, fix it. The compromise, but it's not. The word compromise suggests it's not good either way. But I'm talking of compromise in a really positive way, is to do mile wide, inch deep in weeks. Um,
yeah.
your architectural thinking. And my book, Joe, is looking at, if we're going to use the phrase, data architecture, but there's platform architecture and communications architecture and whatever. Um, but hey, I'm not responsible for them. um,
Right.
but with the data architecture, if we can avoid big design up front, let's have the enterprise data model that will take years to develop. Or the other extreme is we'll just code and see what breaks, balancing agility and discipline. If in a few weeks we can have sufficient, and I love the word sufficient, I put it in inverted commas, if we can have sufficient outline and it's pattern-based and proven, extensible, and implementable, then perhaps you've got the best of both worlds. You've got your high-level visionary thinking, and then you set the people free. Oh, another story. I worked with an agile coach, and he said that their velocity each sprint was getting worse and worse and worse. They were delivering
Mm.
less points on each sprint, and they had a look at it. And I'm trying to cut a long story short. Sprint one, yeah, let's code. Sprint two, they realised some of what they'd done in the first sprint was wrong, so they had to, and I'm talking from a data perspective, so they had to change the tables. Changing the tables meant they had to change the code in from sprint one, and they had to retest from sprint one as well as doing sprint two. Sprint three, they changed the tables from sprints one and two and have to redo the code and redo the testing from sprints one and two before they get on to sprint three. You can see the pattern. He went to the product owner and he said, please, can we have one sprint where we get a sufficient vision of what might look like the endpoint for the data architecture, one sprint, and they measured the increase in velocity. It was 12 to 13 times faster because they did a little bit, not overweight, not big design up front, they did a little bit of investment in looking at the data architecture. I thought they were impressive stats, and they're hard numbers actually measured by the project.
That's awesome.
So yeah, a lot of fun. And look, how long do these data town plans take? A few quick stories. worked at one large Australian telecommunications company, and they had a team that had spent years trying to come up with their enterprise data model. One of the people left, joined another telecommunications company, and he said, John, in 2 weeks' time, I've got 3 projects that kick off that have to share data. I want an enterprise data model like we had at the previous company that took years to develop with a whole team. He said, it's 2 weeks and you're on your own. Can you do it? And I said, I can do better than that. Buy Len Silverstone's volume number 3, I think it was, doesn't matter, volume 2. There's a chapter on telecommunications. It'll cost you $200 US. And you can save my consulting fees. He laughed. He said, no, we'll take you on board. But I warned him. I said, I am going to be using Len Silverstone's patterns as my starting point. I delivered in 10 days sufficient, Joe, for 3 projects to kick off. Another story even more spectacular. Damien, a friend of mine, he was part of, if you remember the term business process re-engineering from decades ago, part of a project, and they'd hit a roadblock and they said, oh, blast, this is not a process problem, it's a data problem. We need an enterprise data model. And Damien said, you start Tuesday at lunchtime, you end Wednesday at lunchtime, you've got 8 hours to do an enterprise data model with drill down. This was a bank into a thing called securitization. I said, I can't even spell it. And he said, you'll be right. And we got sufficient for the business process re-engineers to keep going. And then we spent another few weeks fleshing out, challenging, refining. But that, Joe, is indicative of the speed you can move at if you've got people who are comfortable with data modelling, which was an earlier question, and have familiarity with patterns. And how are we going for time, Joe? I'm enjoying this, but
Oh, we can keep going. We can keep going. Yeah, it's fine.
right.
It's a Friday.
Right.
It's a Friday when we're recording this. It's Saturday morning for John, so I think we got some time. I just have a hard cut-off in about top of the next hour. So I'm learning. It's always good to chat with you. So we'll keep going. So.
Yep. Okay. Well, one of the things I do in some of the workshops I ran. Relates to the use of patterns. People say, but John, these are highly generalized, generic patterns. Parties and roles, geospatial locations, tasks, events, agreements, etc. How are they going to fit in with our organisation? And one of the things I say to them is, there are patterns for car parts, engines, gearboxes, differentials, etc. And then, Joe, I deliberately, I'm not being unkind, but I do bait them. I say, how many differentials in a car? And people will say, oh, 1. And others will say, if it's a 4-wheel drive, that is a part-time 4-wheel drive with I'm trying to think of the name of it. Anyhow, it's part-time 4-wheel drive, diff front, diff and back. If it's a permanent 4-wheel drive, there's 3 diffs, there's a central diff as well. And I say, the reason I'm generating a little bit of discussion on this is somebody who's designing a car can pick up a pattern for a differential, and they can bolt it together with other bits and pieces how they like. You've still got massive flexibility whether you want 1, 2 or 3 diffs. The fact that the differential, Joe, is used widely and it's generic doesn't prevent a car manufacturer from doing a very clever, detailed design for a new vehicle. It just gives them a jump start. They don't have to reinvent some of the detail.
Yeah. I think that term, that word you said, reinvent, is really key here. Because again, I think the pain point that I see a lot of engineers make and modelers is starting from scratch every single time.
Yep. Joe, in America, they made the Mars rover. okay? And I won't be surprised if each of the components, even nuts and bolts, was specifically engineered for that climate, that situation. For a Mars rover, Joe, there are times where you want to reinvent the wheel because it is really unique and you don't want to get it wrong. So I am saying there are times to challenge and say, is this sufficiently distinct? Competitive advantage. It's what makes our organisation different. There are times you will challenge, tweak, extend the base patterns and say, no, actually, we want to do it differently. But my warning is, let's be really conscious and targeted about where we want to do it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of switching gears a bit. I wasn't sure if you told me that you weren't going to write another book, but maybe you said that. I can't remember. Uh,
Yeah, I have no plans of writing any more
okay, this is the last one.
data-centric books. But I said that
Well,
after the first and the second, so yeah.
I remember you saying that to me. But you wrote this next one. Like, what was the incentive? Why go into the third iteration of this idea?
Okay, I'll go quickly. The first book, I participated in agile projects, loved it, saw the dangers of building silos because multiple projects, etc. So I thought, in part influenced by balancing agility and discipline, I thought, let's bring patterns to the agile developers. So tick, done, that was what it was aimed for. Then I started to play in the data vault space. Dan Linstead warns of what he calls source system data vault, where the data vault is shaped by today's data structures in today's systems that probably reflect yesterday's thinking. And he said, no, you've
Hmm.
got to talk to the business. So that's
Yep.
the elephant in the fridge. Then, right, now I'm bearing my heart a little bit. um, I was involved in some presentations to the Data Vault community, and one of the participants, delightful person, so please, no criticism of the individual. This person said, look, John, Dan says the business view is important, and you're saying here's elephant in the fridge, house to do it. But is it actually? And the two-word phrase was, is it virtually impossible to do? I said, no, it's not impossible. And there were concerns expressed what level of data modeling skill is a prerequisite for readers of Elephant in the Fridge, what level of data modeling background is knowledge, how much do they need to know patterns, how technical do they have to be, and the questions were raised about can we do two things? Can we take that part of Elephant in the Fridge that's about getting the business view and really expand it for people who are less skilled? I'm not trying to be offensive here, but they just, yeah, they haven't played in that space much. So, if you like, widen the audience, including business people, not just technical people. And the second big ask, and this is a massive topic, and let's touch on it a bit, was that data town plans, yes, they're useful, Joe, for Data Vault, but they're useful for master data management, reference data management. They're useful for strategic planning. They're useful for cases where you've got two organisations that merge and you need a new combined data architecture. They're useful if you have to have exchange of data, interoperability I mentioned earlier. There are many, many uses for a data town plan bigger than, I say, just Data Vault. I'm not downplaying its value. So um, I was sort of pushed to um, turn what is part of Elephant in the Fridge into something for a wider audience, a business-centric audience who want to deliver more than Data Vault. Whew, there's my
Makes
answer,
sense.
Joe.
But it's catching on. I go on LinkedIn. I see your book is it's on my feed every day. So congratulations. It's awesome to see.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I, as you probably gather, I'm not an academic. I'm a roll the sleeves up practitioner, and this whole idea of writing a book, oh, a joke at my expense. Why did I write the first book? Working at a company, and they came to us on a Friday and they said, "Got really bad news. It's our mistake. We've just found out we've run out of money. We're shutting down the project. You can all go home, but we
Oh,
want you. We want you back in 6 months." This was Christmas time. "We want you back 1st of July when we're going to have a new budget, and we'll have money for you then. Hope to see you back in 6 months' time." So I said to my wife, "I'm not sitting at home watching daytime television. For me, that's not fun." And some of my colleagues on the project said, "Well, I can't wait for 6 months. I'm going to find other work." And I said, "I want to go back to this project, but I've got 6 months. What will I do? I'll write a book." Okay.
why not?
Contacted Steve Hoberman. He signed me up. Steve's a great guy. You know Steve.
He's great. Yeah.
Um, and I had just signed up to deliver the Nimble Elephant in the next 6 months. And the company got back to me and he said, "We've just found money. You're starting on Monday." So
Oh,
the catalyst, Joe, was I had 6 months to spare. The reality was I had a horrid 6 months where I was juggling the continuation of the project and
oh my
writing a book.
God.
But hey, we
Uh,
survived.
yeah, but I know it's stressful. So it's
You're an author.
I mean, it's because, well, yeah, but well, I mean, if you care about your book, which I know you do, like you're thinking about it non like it's the only thing you're thinking about apart from other parts of life. But even then, it's like, I don't know about you, but like the material is always churning. I mean, I can tell that you're still tuned in, right? Because you mentioned that example you saw on TV with the swapped homes, and you're still tying examples together. So like your brain's still just fine. But like, yeah, as an author, I'm always curious about the writing process of authors. Like, what's your writing process? How do you go about writing books?
Okay, I had a cup of coffee with some people who were, I'll call it a little writers group. And I thought, oh, I'll meet some other fellow authors, etc. And one of the people spoke, and she said, "Now, please, Joe, this was for writing novels, not technical
Yeah,
books." Um, but she said there are two broad classes of writers in this genre. One is one who starts with the table of contents and then expands the table of contents, and then before they actually start writing, they have the end-to-end plot. The other extreme writes, instead of from the head, they write from the heart. They just start typing and they themselves have no idea how their story is going to finish. So I'm the former. I start with table of contents. Anybody who's interested in writing, Microsoft Word has you go to view outline. It's got an outline mode, so you can start with table of contents and then level 1 headings and level 2 headings. So anybody who's thinking of writing a book or a paper for TDAN or whatever, if you're not familiar with Word outline mode, I love it. You can shift things around beautifully. That's how I write a book, Joe. Once the
that's super cool.
outline's shaped, then I fill in the text.
How much deviation when you're writing occurs with the table of contents? Does it stay the same? Does it change?
Vastly changes. So, for example, with the most recent book, I was thinking of having a whole part of the book about applying the data town plan with technology considerations. And I thought, no, I don't want to take away from the theme that a data town plan is technology agnostic, and it engages with business people. So I took that whole bit, condensed it, and made it an appendix. And that was a late change, Joe. So yeah, tear it apart, rebuild it. Oh, don't like the flow. Let's move this here. I change it a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And,
do the
and
same
you,
thing.
I was going to say, and you, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Um,
working on a new book right now on data modeling, and it's been, I think for me, it's been hard because I'm just taking a very different approach, I think, than other people have with the topic. But it also, with the question of where does AI fit into this, I feel like we're going through a real time exercise and seeing where does AI fit into pretty much every aspect of our lives,
yes.
including data modeling and otherwise. And so that was like I actually took about 6 7 months off the book just to understand. Okay, so like what's ChatGPT going to do to data, like writing, everything else? Because this has to be a central part of the book, I'm guessing. And it turns out it is. I think I'm coming to a much better sense, at least as of today, where AI fits in terms of data modeling. But I felt like it needed a lot of reflection. I also don't have a publisher this time. I'm doing it myself, so I have a lot more leeway in terms of deadlines.
Yes.
Which I think was great because this book would have, I think it just wouldn't have been. I think it would have been a snapshot in time, which any book is, but I felt like it needed a bit more time to really let the idea
Right.
gel. Just because you are tackling like I say, if you're trying to tackle a very contemporary topic as it's happening, you need to put some cycles to think about it.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So a joke at my expense. You spoke about AI, artificial intelligence. You probably gathered I'm in my mid 70s age-wise. Still loving data modeling. Still doing
so
work.
cool.
Which is
It's awesome.
fantastic. But here's the joke bit. Maybe the time will come where I'm going to need more artificial intelligence rather than natural.
Do you use any of the AI tools in
No.
your day to day life? No.
No, no. Should I, could I possibly? I'll have to
Yeah.
read your book, won't I, Joe?
I don't know. I mean, I find a lot of use in it. That's why I use it as a conversational agent a lot when I'm when I'm thinking through ideas. I found especially the latest generation of models, they're good at I think picking holes in my ideas and it helped me see things from a different perspective. Because I think when I talk to other experts in data, there's almost a group think that we get into where there's
Yep,
different perspectives, but it's sort of the perspective we've been shaped that have been shaped over the years and decades and so forth. Like when I talk to Bill Inman, for example, like I know him really well. He's one of my closest friends, but I can almost tell you what he's going to say. Like it's
right.
so if one of us misses something, two of us are probably going to miss it as a thing. He's got a lot of
Yep,
history, same as you, right? Like you've been in the field, I think, as long as he has. So you have context that I simply don't. So in that regard, like you can just see things that like I just wouldn't see because I wasn't alive then. Or if I was, watching Star Wars in my underoos while you're working. So, um, but 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 the thing is, I think that so what I use the AI for is I think to kind of broaden the perspective because it does poke holes in like a lot of my ideas. I've been using it for all kinds of things in my business, but I think that's just but it's an assistant. I don't use it to write my stuff. I think that cheats myself out of the experience. I think it cheats the reader out of the experience. I'm not going to do that. That's just unethical, and I think it makes you weaker as a thinker and an author. But yeah,
So
it's
this is going to be, you'll probably poke holes in what I'm about to say,
who
but
knows.
my concern with AI, and I'm grossly oversimplifying it, is that AI does some clever things based on the knowledge that exists. Um,
Hmm.
but if,
Yep.
and I'm going to take Albert Einstein and the theory of relativity. If AI had existed in Albert's time, I don't expect AI would have come up with the theory of relativity. Some things need genuine creative thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think that for the books like yours that I think are helping push the thinking of the field forward, like what you're writing isn't a book about how to use Python for data modeling or something. That's not what you've
Yeah,
written, right? I think a lot of those cases when you're writing with code, like that's the LLMs are perfect for this kind of stuff. Just it knows code, use it. It'll suck at first, it'll get better. But yeah, I think you're right. For today. We'll see about tomorrow, what the advance starts tomorrow. But
yeah,
yeah, but you're right though. I mean, I think the books that people are going to want to read, like yours, I think is popular because it's more grounded. It takes a step back from the technician standpoint, and it's a book that ties itself to helping push our work forward with business. And these are the kind of books I think that there's a lot of demand for them, but they're hard to write and
yep,
there's not a lot of people writing good ones because you can write something like this, but most people I think are going to do a pretty bad job at writing a book. Like, no, you're the guy who's going to write the book you just wrote, Data Elephant in the Boardroom. Like that's a John Giles book. There's no, even if I tried, there's no way in hell I could write a book like what you wrote. It wouldn't work, right? And so, because it has your voice, it has your experience, it has your ideas, decades and decades of experience and all that. So,
yep.
it's
Something else you just touched on too, Joe, was different people looking at different data models. There was some debate, would have been in the 1990s, and two schools of thought, and I may not use the correct research terminology, but the theme of what I'm saying is going to be solid. Some people said that there is a reality out there, in the quote real world, and if we can understand there is one reality, and if we can understand it and model it, there will be one correct data model. Okay, so that's one school of thought. Another school of thought said data modeling is creative. And we sometimes joke, if you've got a half a dozen data modelers in a room, how many models are you going to create? Probably 7. One each plus
right.
one will change his mind, his or her mind. So the other school of thought is that it's a creative exercise. And a gentleman, Graham Simpson, did a whole PhD on this topic,
He
and he
did.
basically came down saying there is creativity. One of my concerns with the first line of thinking is if I have a data model, Joe, and you have a data model for the same organisation and they're different, according to this theory, if I'm right, you, Joe, must be wrong. Okay,
And vice
and
versa. Or vice versa. Yeah.
well,
QED, right?
that's more
One of them
likely,
has
yeah.
to be right. Yeah.
Or both. Both are wrong. But I've seen some tension um,
Yeah.
amongst data modelers, and if people can relax and say, "Let's see your model. I want to understand your model, Joe. What merits does it have that can enrich my thinking, and vice versa?" So, without getting into the debate, I happen to think Graham Simpson's right, but others may disagree, and that's fine. But what I am saying is, if you've got multiple data modelers, let's respectfully look at the different perspectives and see how we can join the ideas together for a better outcome.
Oh yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, Bill Inman told me that his one of his true norths is believable data,
Right?
right? That adds
Okay.
value to the business. Notice that he didn't say it has to be 100% accurate because it's not a reality. If you show me a business where the data is 100% to the T accurate across all data sets,
Yeah.
I'll buy you a car. Now that I said that, I'll caveat that with a big corporation because if it's like your little tiny business, whatever. But it is one of those things where it feels there's a lot of comparisons, right? Like John would, but if you talk to the business, if you ask the business, like domain experts in the business, people who are in it all day, how do certain functions work, what's the workflow, what's the vocabulary, you're still going to get different answers. This is
Yep.
how it is.
Well, two quick stories. I think you know Larry Burns, a fellow American. If you don't, he's a delightful gentleman. Um, but he worked at a big vehicle
So who was this?
manufacturer. Larry Burns,
Oh yes,
Burns.
Larry. Yeah. Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Yep.
Yeah, Larry's he's awesome.
Yeah.
He's a national treasure here in America.
Okay, my Aussie
Yeah.
accent, I apologise.
No worries.
But one of the stories he tells, and he's got a book on data model storytelling, is that in his organisation you had some people who were involved in the process of writing warranties for new vehicles, and other people who were in the business process of processing claims against warranties, and he quite understandably assumed that a warranty is a warranty. The data model for a warranty would be the same in both groups. They saw different
Right.
aspects, different parts, and he had to pull them together. So my second story, I did some work in a remote part of Australia for a mining company, and the well-intentioned organiser had me doing 1 hour meetings, one-on-one, with 4 people before lunch, 4 people after lunch. And it was solid and intensive, and I wanted to get them together in the room at the same time. But no, that's the way it had been set up. Got to the end, and I said gently to this guy, I think we just need to pull the people together just to get some clarity on a few issues. And Joe, it was like me getting a hand grenade and pulling the pin. I would just drop a topic in where I had heard divergent opinions from within the organisation. Pull the pin, drop it, and poof, off went the discussions. At the end of that combined session, one of the gentlemen came up to me and he said, I've worked for this company for decades, and I always thought everybody saw our company the same way. This is the first time I realised that there was actually quite divergent opinions. So in the end, we all parted as friends, and he thanked me for that. He said it's opened my eyes. But yes, if you're getting an enterprise model, you are going to get differing views from different parts of the organisation.
Yeah, it happens.
And a joke at my expense. Can I just do this one quickly?
Yeah,
Joke at my
go for it.
expense.
Yeah.
I would work 8 hours in intense one-on-one interviews. I'd work another 8 hours consolidating the notes, and then get a few hours sleep. We were right beside the ocean, and one night about midnight, I just needed some fresh air. So I'm walking along it wasn't moonlight, but it was enough light, and I'm jumping from black rock to black rock on the sand. The next jump was a big black rock. No, it wasn't. It was a rock pool. So
Oh,
I
fun.
went. I was at this point. I was fully awake and I could go back to work. Just a joke at my expense, Joe.
That's funny. You
Do
mentioned
you,
you mentioned an individual, Graham Simpson.
yes,
I want to talk about. Did you used to work with him?
yes. So there was a company in the 90s, Simpson and Bowles and Associates. Graham was he still is. He's moved out of data modelling. He actually
Yeah,
writes novels. The Rosie
that's what I want to
Project
talk
is.
about. He's a very fascinating person. Yeah.
Oh yes. And right at the moment, he and his wife Anne are doing a road trip around Australia on some new books, or a new book that is on mental health, and they are donating all the proceeds from this initiative to mental health. So look,
That's
he's
super cool.
moved beyond data, but he hasn't slowed down, Joe.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I have both of his books, Data Modeling Theory and Practice, and then Data Modeling Essentials. Data Modeling Essentials might be one of the. I think it might be the best nuts and bolts guide I've seen for data modeling.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's comprehensive and it's well written, and it's like nobody's heard of this thing that I've talked to. It's
Yep.
awesome. So go get it, people. But there's, I mentioned one because I got an email from Amazon one day for book recommendations, and I was looking through. I was like, Graham Simpson. This couldn't be the same guy that wrote the modeling books. And I was like, I look at him like, holy crap, it's the same guy. What the, like? And he's a best-selling author. He's selling millions and millions and millions and millions of books. I was like, what the hell? Um,
Yes.
but he's written these books, these data modeling books, and as I kind of look back at Australia back in the day, in the 90s and 2000s, I could make an argument that Australia had some of the strongest data people in the world at one point. You had Graham, yourself. There was others, but like, what was in the water at the time? Because it seemed like there was just this nexus of activity that was going on.
Okay, I'll give you a really simple answer. You're giving a compliment to the Australian population and some creative minds amongst it. Graham actually employed people from around the world. He actually travelled to other countries and interacted with people and made job offers. So he collected some of the best minds and got them to come and join his company. So yes, we
Oh,
had some creative people, but many of them were not born in Australia, Joe.
mm, got
And
it.
and without getting into politics and all the rest, um, it is my opinion. I'm looking at the United States from outside, but my opinion is that one of the strengths of the United States is that historically it has been opened up as a home to some great people, including, I just mentioned, wasn't Albert Einstein an American citizen but born in, I think, Germany? Am I
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
so both our nations, Joe, my opinion is we have benefited from great people who've made our
Oh, greatly.
country home.
My mom is a first generation American, right? She's first generation
Right,
immigrant, so it's like, yeah,
right.
I
Okay,
know what
so
it's like. It's yeah,
so,
um,
so, so yes, so
yeah. So
Graham had some
it's
great people,
yeah,
but many of them were not born in Australia.
got it. Yeah, I just remember looking around. There was some other person who's really hard in time series forecasting. I can't remember quite who it is. But yeah, just very strong.
Graham Witt, he's still
Graham Witt was another person who was, I think,
okay.
Australian, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's this other person? Anyway, yeah, but it's absolute legends. It reminded me of what happened with Denver, Colorado, actually back in the '90s, where Denver also had, at some point in time, I think Dan Lindsay was there, Kent Graziano, Bill Inman, Claudia Inmoff, like the data warehousing and data vault, like you know,
Yep.
epicenter was Denver of all places, and not there anymore. But it's just interesting.
Yeah.
So you see all these pockets of data powerhouses, and they just sort of move around. So it's
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of closing out, like you're in Australia. If I'm not mistaken, you kind of in the countryside.
Yes, yes. So I live, well, the closest major city is Melbourne, but that's 4 or 5 hours drive away.
Wow,
So
that's remote.
if I open up the window behind me now, I'm looking out. I've got acreage. It's not farmland. Excuse me, please, Joe. It's
Gosh.
Australian native flora and fauna. So
Wow,
we have lovely critters like wallabies and kangaroos and koalas, and we have
wow.
less lovely ones like three of the most venomous species of snakes in the world. I've got them on my property. So yeah,
Oh, great.
you just keep your eyes open.
Have you ever
Um,
had any close encounters?
uh, yes, yeah, yes, I have. Uh, yeah, I was walking through the grass one time just to go and check the fence line. And I thought, oh, that's a big one. Um, it was probably 2 meters long, so 6+ foot, and yeah, one of the world's most venomous snakes. But it's not an
Oh my god.
aggressive snake. I'll tell
Okay.
you a light-hearted story. My wife won't mind me sharing this with the world. Um, pulled into the carport, and we'd been shopping, and she said she'd go and unlock the house if I could start, please, unloading the car. And I'm unloading the car, unloading, and I'm thinking, I expected her back sooner. So you may not be aware, but some snakes are quite poor-sighted. So if you stand still, they're confused. I saw movement, but now there's no movement. And Ginny is standing in a cotton dress with bare legs, with one of our really venomous snakes up in strike position, right
Oh my
beside her
God.
leg. And a lot of people wouldn't have the capability just to stand still, even if it's the right thing to do. And she smiled at me and just with her finger pointed down to say, this is why I'm not moving. Long story short, I joined in and we moved the snake on, so he went on his way. And Ginny, here she's been in a let's say a confronting situation. She said, "Thank you, John. Now I'll help you unload," and just got on with the day as if nothing
She's
had
so
happened.
chill. That's hilarious.
Um, yeah. So
He chose well. That's good. Well, John, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Hope we can spend some time together in Australia this summer when I'm there. So, great.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay. It'd be
Well,
great to catch you. Thanks for the chat. I've enjoyed it. Thank you,
of
Jay.
course, yes, of course, yes. Hope you have a good morning. So
Okay.
talk to you soon,
Yep.
man. All right.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
Have
Right.
a good one.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.